Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How-To, and on today's video, we're going to take a look at a budget gaming cube style case, or fish tank style case, from the people over at CIT. Now this is the DS360 ATX Cube. This one comes in around about £50 without fans, or alternatively you can pick it up with fans for around about £60 to £70 depending on which fans you get and where you're shopping. Also, it's available in both black and white. Obviously we've got the black version here. And it has support for up to 10 120mm fans installed inside it, and comes conveniently included. Whether you have the with fans or without fans version, it still comes with a handy 6-port ARGB and PWM fan hub. It also has 3 tempered glass side panels and comes in at measurements of 437mm tall, 281mm wide, and 424mm in length. Also, this will support GPUs up to 415mm in length. You can put CPU coolers in here, tower coolers that is, up to 160mm, and it will take power supplies up to 230mm. So overall, for £50, I think this is actually a reasonably compelling option on the market these days. Of course, as with anything, you can spend a little bit less and get something a bit cheaper, and you can spend some bit more and get something a little bit better, as is always the case. But I think for a lot of people, especially in the kind of PC flipping market, around like £50 is the sweet spot for PC cases. Now ideally it would be £50 with the fans, but we don't live in that world anymore, so unfortunately this is what we have to deal with. So I'm going to go through today, do a bit of a teardown of this case, go through some of its pros and cons, and I will say, spoiler alert, most of them are pros. But obviously, as always, as you go through the video, please let me know your comments as we're going through, and maybe even put a timestamp so I know what it is you're actually talking about. That would be absolutely fantastic. So with all that said and done, let's take a closer look. So first of all, with the design, it's quite a nice design. I'm not entirely sure why they've gone with this little angular section on the side there. For some people, I guess it is going to be one of those things which kind of elevates it a little bit and gives it a little bit of a different look. But I think for simplicity, it might have been easier just to kind of square it off at the corners. But again, as with anything, design is a very subjective thing. Maybe you love this, maybe you hate it. Again, let us know in the comments what your thoughts are. So it's actually very easy to take apart, and it's actually pretty lightweight as well. Even though it is lightweight, it is pretty well built, and it isn't the kind of more usual CIT kind of build quality, which we're used to seeing on some of their extreme budget cases. We actually reviewed the CIT F3, I think it was many years ago, and that thing was bloody awful. But this is a step, certainly, I think, in the right direction. It ticks pretty much all the boxes in terms of airflow, looks, pricing, arguably, and flexibility. So whether you want to put a lot of water cooling stuff in here, whether you want to go air cooling, the choices are yours. And all the cutouts for the ventilation are the hexagonal mesh, which if you've watched this channel for any amount of time, you'll know that is my preferred style of mesh. It's much stronger and also allows much more airflow. The ventilation per centimetre is far in excess of a lot of the circular or kind of square designs we've seen. Anyway, let's get started. So the front panel is a toolless design. So if we take that one off first of all, there's a little tab here at the top, just a gentle pull outward, and the glass comes out. It's actually held in at the bottom, 2 little tags which go into the bottom of the case, and then you've got some push pins here which go into the receivers. Now you do get spare receivers included in the accessories bag, which we'll take a very quick look at now. So in the accessories bag, you get all the usual stuff, so all the screws you could possibly need to install your motherboard into the case and hard drives, etc, etc. Also, they've included some cable ties for cable management, which is awesome. And again, some of those spare plastic clips should those fracture, which eventually over time they inevitably will. You also get, as we said earlier, this 6-port ARGB and PWM fan hub. So SATA powered, so plug that into your power supply. This will power the fans and the addressable RGB lighting, up to 6 ports for each. The red color-coded one is the one which is the fan sensing. So basically you plug this other end into the motherboard, so you've got PWM and also 3-pin 5V ARGB. That plugs into your motherboard, and then it'll pass through the signal from your motherboard through to 6 or up to 6 fans. You can of course use less should you wish to. So that is pretty good. Also, there is a magnetic backing on there, so don't have to worry about sticking it into the case. So yeah, that's pretty useful. I think it's actually a good thing, even though this is the version without fans. Although some of you are probably saying, well, Mike, you've got some fans in there. Well, that is a bit of a remnant from, we took a little bit of a look at this in our latest live stream, which you're more than welcome to check out. I just wanted to put them in there just to see what they look like and just to kind of give you some sort of visual representation of what it might look like if you did have installed fans. And I actually think it works pretty well. As I said earlier, inside here you can fit up to 10 120mm fans. So 3 on this side here, 3 in the bottom section, 1 in the rear, and again another 3 in the top. So potentially you can put a 360mm AIO in any 3 of the locations, in the bottom, in the top, or on the side. Obviously the bottom is probably a bad idea if you're going for a sealed loop. If you're going for an open loop situation, then that is going to be absolutely fine with multiple radiators. But I think it's nice that they give you the options to do that. And also again, it's got the mesh on there, which is very nice for airflow on the bottom. And it's also raised up quite well, so air is going to get underneath there quite easily. Something else I like as well is the fact that the side section, where the fans are at the moment, if we take a look at the back of it, you can see there is basically no restrictions at all. A couple of metal bars going across for strengthening, but other than that, it's very open, so it's not going to impede airflow at all, which is excellent. So while we're on the motherboard side, we'll take a look at everything. So ATX setup, it came as standard with the 6 pins or poles or pillars installed. So I've installed the additional 3. Those are included in the accessories bag. You've got plenty of room and backplate area, so for messing around with CPU coolers, that's absolutely fine. You also got a massive amount of headroom at the top, so if you are thinking of putting a radiator in the top and fans, you've got around about 75mm between the top of the case and the motherboard, so you're not going to get to that situation where you've installed your radiator and your fans and then you can't plug in some of your EPS cables or maybe your CPU headers, ARGB headers, that kind of stuff. It does leave the motherboard completely unrestricted and very easy to access should you want to do any kind of swapping out, which I think again is excellent. It is a little bit limited on pass-throughs, so again back to the top, there's only 2 pass-throughs at the top, so EPS maybe on one side, fans and ARGB on the other possibly, and the same goes for the bottom, only 2 inlets or outlets in the corners. Would have been nice to have maybe another one in the middle if you're putting 3 fans just so you can space out your wire in, but overall I think it is an absolutely fine layout. In terms of pass-throughs for the cabling for maybe your 24-pin and graphics card power, there's cutouts along the side there next to the fans, so hopefully I've got a shot of that so I can show you it, but it's it's pretty self-explanatory. Pretty much overall, this type of design, the layout in here is basically perfect for my use case scenarios, and I think for most people in terms of flexibility and cooling. The options to have a tower cooler or an AIO is excellent. Some of these cases tend to be a little bit more narrow, so you could only put a 92mm tower cooler, which isn't always optimal, especially for modern processors. But yeah, overall I think this is great. There is a significant downside though, unfortunately. The PCI Express blanking plates at the back are the ones that you bend out, which isn't particularly a deal breaker, but it would have been nice to see a case at around about £50 to have those as being removable. Of course, if you want to, you can fold all of them out and replace them with PCI Express blanking plates of your choosing, which you can pick up very easily from places like Amazon, eBay, AliExpress, etc. Or perhaps you've got some knocking around and you want to put them in. That is entirely up to you. So I think that is pretty much it for the inside here. The only other thing really is this additional piece of glass. Some of you are probably wondering, how does this come out? It's just a pull out, so a little bit of pressure from the top there, same as the front panel, and all the glass has got nice beveled edges on there, no sharp edges, which is excellent. So it gives you a little bit more room when you're putting your build together. Unfortunately, the last piece of glass on the very side here does appear to be actually glued into place, which is a little bit of a shame. Would have been nice if that was on some sort of release mechanism so you could take it out, but it does appear to be glued, unfortunately. But yeah, still absolutely fine. You've still got absolutely tons of room to get to all of your components and for general maintenance purposes. Moving around to the back of the case, pretty much standard layout for these types of dual chamber cases. So this side is for your PCI Express, your I/O shield for your motherboard, your fan if you're going to install one. A little bit of movement vertically there for the 120mm fan. When it gets to the back side, so you've got ventilation there to allow heat from possibly your power supply or any hard disk drives which may be installed, and your power supply is going to be in this kind of section here in the vertical orientation rather than being horizontal. But again, that is absolutely fine, and again the feet on the bottom pretty decent, so allowing air to get inside should it need to. Again, I can't stress enough, it is a real shame about these PCI Express blanking plates. There is a screw there to remove this blanking plate on this side, but all of these are the ones which you have to physically bend out, which is a little bit of a shame. Moving around to the back of the case. So the back of the case comes off pretty easily. There's just 2 thumb screws on there, which are tightened ridiculously tight from the factory. So I did have to loosen them with a screwdriver to make them actually thumb screws, but other than that, that's absolutely fine. So as you can see from the back here, you've got a ventilation area here for pulling in cool air for your power supply. Absolutely brilliant. And also we've got that mesh section here for allowing the exhaust for your fans or possibly for an intake. Now there is another slight downside for this particular area, but it is overcomable. You can actually get around it very easily. So there isn't actually any filtration on this side panel other than this mesh itself, which is good in one way because obviously it's completely unrestricted in terms of letting air either out or bringing air in, but it is going to be unfiltered. If you do want to change that, you can remove the back panel, which just slides outwards. And as you can see, it's just a traditional back panel. But what you can do is actually remove the magnetic filter, which is actually on the bottom of the case, which we'll quickly do straight away. And you also, this time you can see the bottom of the case. This is a little bit trickier to get off. It is magnetic. So looking at the bottom, again, you've got those nice big feet, all this ventilation area, nicely raised, lots of options for the fans there on the bottom. So that is excellent. But this filter, if you do want to use it as actually a filter for either exhaust for the side fans, you can just transfer it to there. So it works in both locations. So now this is filtered. So whether it be for intake or whether it's for exhaust, it's going to be absolutely fine. And I've said this before, realistically, you don't need the fan grill on the bottom, the filtration, because with dust and the way fans work, unless your fans are running at extremely high rates, they're not going to have enough power to pull dust from underneath there in at 90 degrees and then another 90 degrees to go back up through the fans. That is extremely unlikely, and all the years I've had cases of this style, I've always done the same thing. I've always removed the bottom filter to improve airflow, and it's never ever made it worse for dust. Now, if you're in an area where you're spraying dust particles like aerosols, deodorants, antiperspirants, that kind of thing, then potentially those very, very tiny particles may get in there. But your general everyday dust, your pet hair, stuff like that, is going to be absolutely fine. Okay, so now taking a close look in the back. So as you can see, I've done a little bit of cable management here. There are some cable management points and tie down areas. So I've cable tied that to remove any obstructions from the fans. Again, completely unrestricted in terms of mesh on this actual frame section. So that's pretty cool. I have got an additional cable coming through from those 3 fans I've installed. So ignore this cable. It doesn't exist, only in my world. When it comes to the I/O, so you've got your front panel I/O, reset button, power LED, etc, etc. You've also got your USB, so for 2 USB ports on the front, USB 2.0, 2 ports on there. You've got a USB 3.0, only a single port on there, type A, and also you have got your HD audio solution connection, which is your traditional 10-pin with 1 blanked off. So yeah, those are nice. Would have been nice to see those cables blacked off a little bit, or blanked off, just so they weren't as visible, but yeah, I don't think it's too much of a problem. So also in this area, you have got options for storing disk drives. So there is a caddy here. You can put in there a single 3.5-inch drive plus a 2.5-inch drive on the outside, 3.5 on the inside, or you can do a 2.5 on the outside and a 2.5 on the inside. So 2 drives potentially if you wanted to. I think most people these days are starting to err more to the side of NVMe storage, which goes actually on the motherboard itself rather than putting in physical additional storage, but at least there is an option. If you want to remove this cage to create more room in here, should you need it, just 3 screws and that bracket comes all the way out, leaving this completely unrestricted. So that potentially might be an option. Again, when it comes to power supplies, up to 230mm power supplies, so going from this section here right the way across. Obviously, if you've got modular cables, etc., it's going to be easier to cable manage. Although saying that, there is a pretty generous depth there, as you can see, and also underneath there. So lots of places for you to stash unnecessary or unneeded cabling, just in case you do need it at a later date. So yeah, pretty good. I like this overall. Would have been nice to have seen slightly better I/O on here, but I guess it's a £50 case, so you do have to give some things in to that price point, because USB Type-C isn't a cheap thing to implement on cases. It's going to add like an extra $5 to the case or the costing, so that's more than likely why they haven't done it. So moving across to the top section, so we've got our I/O. Now we've already heard in our live stream that a lot of people were a bit disappointed that the I/O was on the top. I kind of understand where you're coming from, especially with this type of case. It would be more beneficial, I think, to have it towards the bottom, maybe on a little breakout box. Potentially that is something you could modify yourself should you wish to, but for most people I think it's going to be okay. You can always plug in a convenient USB hub like the Ugreen one, which we reviewed ages ago, which I'll try and link in the video description. Those are about £5–10, and that'll give you 3 additional USB-A ports and also a card reader, which makes life a little bit easier if you can't reach these ports. But talking of the ports and the buttons, so power button, you've got your hard drive LED, also power LED, there is a reset switch, you've got a separate headphone and mic jacks, 2 USB 2.0s and 1 USB 3.0. All of those are Type A, unfortunately, and not Type C. As with the bottom section, you have got this filter, which again, you probably could use in the back panel if you wanted to. So maybe if you don't want to filter the outgoing air from the top of your case, you could make use of this in the side or the bottom. They're relatively interchangeable because of them being magnetic. And as you can see, again, we've got this hexagonal mesh, which is excellent. Loads of options for putting in fans in different placements. So maybe if you want to put 2 in there or 3 or whatever you want to do. No options for 140 mils, which I think is actually probably a good idea because it just makes things more complicated. It's like, well, do I put 140s in the top, 120s in the bottom? You don't have to worry about that. It's just 120s throughout. So again, if you're buying some of these more cheap fans, which we've reviewed in the past, it's really easy to get hold of 120mm cheap fans if you want to completely populate this with 9 or 10 fans, whichever you want to do. So yeah, that is absolutely fine. Overall, I think personally this case has a lot of potential, and it's one of those kind of designs which I guess it kind of borrows a lot of the design language from companies such as HowTo, who started off doing that kind of little cut-off section on the sides there, and obviously some manufacturers now are putting LCD screens and all kinds of things in there. But for around about £50, I think this actually is pretty decent. And I actually spent my own money on this. I will be doing a build in it, and some cases from Amazon, as you've probably seen on some videos, that you get them and it's like, just no, it's going back. But I think for this, it cost me, I think it was $51.99 when I purchased it. I'm pretty happy, and I think it's going to make a nice PC, and when it's all decked out with parts, it's going to look the business, and hopefully it will generate some sales, which is ultimately what it comes down to if you're trying to flip a PC. If I was keeping it for myself, would I buy this case? Not entirely sure. I think it's one of those things where, like I mentioned earlier in the video, if you spend a bit more, you get a bit more. So if you like this kind of layout of case where you've got the 3 fans on the side and the kind of chimney style airflow, then you might want to look at something else, maybe like the Lian Li Vector V100. We like that a great deal. It's a great case, and you can pick that up sometimes for the kind of mid £60 mark, so about £15 more than this. It does come with the fans as well, and they are really nice fans, and it has got a very distinctive look. So potentially if you're maybe on the fence, you're not too sure what to get, and you've watched this and thought, that's not too bad, but I want something a little bit nicer, then maybe check out the review we did for the Vector V100. I think you'll like that if you like this one, and it's not much more expensive, which makes it one of those things where you really do have to kind of consider your options. Anyway, there you go. That's my thoughts and feelings on the CIT DS360 ATX Cube, which kind of isn't a cube because they've chopped off a bit, but anyway, regardless. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you have, smash the like button. If you want to see more content like this on a daily basis, maybe consider hitting subscribe, and then don't forget to hit the all notifications button. That way you'll be notified of all future video releases. But for now, I'll be Mike. This is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.